Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you about complexity. We live in a very complex world. I spend a lot of time thinking about it. I'm sure quite a few of you do as well. And I wonder, how deep is the ocean in which we swim? How complex is the world in which we live? The gameplay you're going to see is what I would call an honest gameplay. This is normally how I play Black Ops 2. I'm rocking a SWAT 5.56 with silencer and stock. I don't think I have quick draw on this one. I'm also rocking Ghost and Flak Jacket that keeps me off the radar and on the points. I'm going to have some very good gameplay in the beginning. I believe I'm going to get 2 or 3 triple feeds with this gun, and then the second round's going to be a little bit rougher. But as I was saying, our world is very, very complex. You would think this is a bad thing, but this is a good thing, because if there's anything that humans are drawn to, it's complexity. If you don't believe it, just look at the inventions around you. I mean, you're watching this on a computer monitor and listening to it on speakers, and I would doubt less than 1/10% of you truly understand how that monitor and speakers work. And honestly, I would confess that I don't either. I have a good idea of how they work, but do I know the intricacies of it? Absolutely not. Look at our societies, how complex we've built our social rituals and the economic exchange in the world in which we live. It's a very big and complicated thing, and I kind of got the idea because in the last I Wonder video, there were lots of people trying to explain extremely complex issues in single YouTube comments and kind of having the false idea that you can sum up big things in small packages and have it be absolute. And one of the few things I've learned about this life so far is that almost nothing is absolute, except, well, actually, I'm having a hard time coming up with very, very absolute things at the moment, and we live with a lot of ambiguity. Whether you know it or not, you really don't know much about this world, and I can prove it to you with a child's game. I'm sure you've done this before. Have you ever played a game with your parents, or if you're a parent, had your child play this game with you? It's called the why game, where you just ask why over and over and over and over, and about 4 questions in, you're no longer genuinely curious, but testing to see how smart the other person is, or perhaps trying to aggravate them. But we'll do this. Let's say yesterday I was walking and it was cold outside, and I stepped on a patch of ice and I slipped and fell and busted my butt. And you're going to ask, well, why? And I'll tell you, there's a lot of different ways you could go. I could say, well, I had to walk to the store, and we could go that way. Or I had a funny pace, or I didn't notice it. There's a lot of different ways I could answer the why, but I'll answer with, well, ice is slippery. You're going to ask, okay, why is ice slippery? Well, it's smooth and it's wet and it doesn't have a lot of friction and that sort of thing, so when I step on it, my feet slide out from under me because I'm off balance. And you're like, okay, well then why is it smooth and wet? And I'll say, well, that's because ice by its nature is a smoother texture, and our friction, which we rely on to walk, relies on the sort of microstructure that you don't see without a microscope that kind of locks in place, because nothing's actually smooth. It's always very rough when you zoom in on it, and those rough edges kind of lock in on it. I mean, just look at your hands. They look kind of smooth, but you've got ridges. Pretty much every surface is like that. And, on top of that, the temperature, when I step on it, my temperature of my foot melts some ice, so we've got on a smooth surface, we have some water there, which is by its nature slip. The pressure of my foot, because I'm changing the pressure temperature curve here, the pressure of my foot actually melts some of that ice, and maybe some of the kinetic energy. Maybe when I stamp down, I'm adding a little kinetic energy and breaking it up and melting it and that sort of thing. And you're going to ask, maybe you could ask, well, why is it slippery? Why does the temperature? Why does the pressure? Why a lot of things? And I'll say, well, and you'll just ask, okay, well, why does it melt? And I will say, at an atomic level, there is an energy transfer. I am transferring energy from my foot into that ice. And then you're going to say, okay, well, why does that happen? And I'll tell you that just by the nature of our universe, by the laws that it was born or created into, or whatever you want to believe, that energy flows from high density or high energy areas to low density or low energy areas. That's how our system of entropy works. You get some sort of loss in energy usually, but it flows from high to low like osmosis in a cell, like a pressure system. And you'll ask me, okay, well, why does energy flow that way? And I'll say, at this point, I'm out of my league. I have not the training to answer the next questions for you properly, and I don't want to just read Wikipedia. I try to only talk about things I really know what I'm talking about. But just a simple question like that, you think you get it. Your brain just assumes ice slippery, good to go. But if you want to ask if you truly understand it, do you really understand it? The answer is gonna be no. And I'll tell you, don't feel dumb. Don't worry about it, because nobody understands everything. everything. It is absolutely impossible for one human being to understand everything about this world, and by everything I mean everything. We could even limit it just to physical systems and not talk about social structures or what happened in the past and raw factual memorization, because the brain has a lot of memory potential. There is a lot of information you can put on the brain. The human brain still holds more information than even the smartest of the supercomputers and can process certain things faster and more intelligently than they can. But the sheer amount of knowledge that's out there, the amount of understanding that's required in processing is beyond that which is capable of a human brain. Honestly, I believe it's impossible even in a single field, and this comes from my experience in college and, being a professor's assistant in academics and this sort of thing. Even for the professors that literally wrote the book on something, or the professors that invented the field, because, in most universities you'll have that one really prestigious guy that founded some sort of subfield of something that's really neat and gets a lot of research money poured into. Even they do not know everything about that field. They might know a lot of things, but there's some things they still don't know or don't entirely understand or rely on references for, or have to look up, or have to get outside expertise. And that's just kind of how it goes. That's how our world works, because the models that our system relies on, our understanding, because we as human beings, we don't innately understand a lot of this stuff. We have to model it. We have to use the scientific method. And a model can either be literally a physical model, like a tiny city that you look down on, or a tiny engine, or sort of a mathematical model, or, supply, demand, economics, that sort of stuff. But they all rely on assumptions, usually a lot of assumptions. Social models rely on assumptions, and that's usually personality types. Economic models rely on assumptions, and that's usually fixing a lot of variables in place when they are never fixed in place, and assuming that things work the way they do. Scientific models, the same thing. You assume things like no friction, no gravity, no whatever variable I don't feel like accounting for today because the math is too complex. And even mathematical systems, which I don't understand quite as well, they have their own very specific logic to them. They require assumptions that you're off in abstract land. They may or may not be true, and sometimes you're just trying to prove your assumptions true, and that's crazy. But the thing is, a lot of these things that we build our models around, our great wealths of knowledge and understanding, are essentially assumptions that are either not true, not entirely true, kind of true, or just plain wrong. They can be off. Sometimes they're true, rarely they're true, a lot of different things like that. And the models can only hold a few variables at a time. As I mentioned before, we fix price, we fix cost, we fix labor. In science, we fix a lot of things. In social structures, we hold them in place so that we don't bombard ourselves with too much information to keep track of. And that's kind of how it is. I mean, honestly, if you want to think about it, it is difficult to understand and predict the actions of a single human being. Even, well, I mean, we don't entirely know their background. We know the background that they tell us, and even if we're a wizard and we have psychic powers and we watch them for their whole lives and we apply personality models and we're a really good person and we feel these things, there is no 100% way to predict the actions of a human being. There are ways to get really close to doing this, but definitely not 100% do this. Some people will still throw you for a curveball and you will be surprised. We are perhaps better at estimating the actions of masses of people because we can do that on average. A lot of our knowledge and understanding is based on averages, which itself is a sort of mathematical assumption that when you run all the way logic through it looks pretty good, but you can't 100% go for it. But we can predict actions in mass, on average, 9 out of 10 people, 7 out of 10 people. But there are the outliers. There are the oddballs that don't fit in, that won't do this, that have some sort of experience or understanding or belief system that we are not prepared for, that are not congruent with. And sometimes people just won't like you or won't cooperate no matter what. And even our averaging system is wrong. I mean, it's highly probabilistic, but there's always the probability that it could totally fail, and a group of people that you think will like something will not, and they will reject it. This happens a lot in marketing. Like, think about how many different kinds of sodas have you seen come and go, or candies, or experimental products that somebody somewhere thought was a great idea that just absolutely did not work out. And that's where this modeling, this averaging, this prediction system that we have for large numbers of people totally fails. And you would think that all this information that I'm hitting you with today, basically saying you don't know anything and we're all dullards, you would think that this is uncomfortable, that people wouldn't like this, that we would feel abnormal or out of our element or out of our skin. And that's not true. This is one of the things that makes us humans, is that we do understand the world and how complex it is, or we can understand how complex it is, and that we're comfortable in it. Most of us work our entire lives trying to learn something better, trying to do something better, trying to improve the lives of others so that they can understand more. And one of the things that we do is we grow and expand our knowledge over our lives. So, as in the previous commentary, I wondered what separates us from animals, one of the few things is that we're one of the few animals that innately tries to understand the world around us and tries to learn more and more and more and to make our world perhaps not less complex but less well understood, and we're very comfortable living in the ambiguity of complexity. I hope you enjoyed the commentary. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.